In Screenlife cinema, the digital desktop acts as the entire cinematic world. The narrative moves strictly through familiar user interface actions, search queries, messages, and calls. This storytelling format initially gained traction through low-budget indie horror, where laptop webcam limitations generated natural suspense, before scaling into complex psychological thrillers. The producer and director who popularized this distinct cinematic language is Timur Bekmambetov, establishing strict rules to keep audiences immersed in a single-screen illusion. In 2026, Bekmambetov directed Mercy, casting A-list actors like Chris Pratt in an attempt to push the genre past its constraints. Backed by a $60 million budget, the production shed its indie constraints to construct an ambitious, futuristic science fiction narrative. Injecting a high-budget Hollywood spectacle into a format designed for intimate digital observation creates an immediate structural conflict. Scaling up the visuals alters the mechanics that make Screenlife work. Mercy is set in a Los Angeles justice system governed entirely by an artificial intelligence algorithm that issues automated death sentences in a 90-minute window. The plot positions itself as a sharp critique of algorithmic justice, showing a society trapped by invasive monitoring and machine-driven verdicts. However, the film's execution betrays its text. The aesthetic choices required to make a massive sci-fi blockbuster actively dismantle the intended critique. By violating established single-screen rules and applying hyper-polished visual effects to surveillance footage, the production shifts from warning the audience to impressing them. Ultimately, Mercy strips away the terror of constant monitoring. Its technical presentation operates as an advertisement for a highly efficient corporate police state. Traditional filmmaking relies on editing to construct a cohesive physical space out of fragmented camera angles. This diagram outlines suture, a concept by theorists Udart and Dayan. By structuring edits logically, like looking at a speaker, then cutting to the listener's reaction, the film hides the camera's presence. This effectively stitches the viewer into the narrative, masking the constructed images. This revised chart demonstrates how Screenlife adapts that theory into Meta-Suture. Without physical cameras, everyday graphical interactions act as edits. Waiting for a video to buffer or watching a typing bubble replaces traditional cuts. Familiarity with these actions sustains the illusion. Mercy contradicts this framework by refusing to stay confined within a strictly digital interface. At key moments, the perspective suddenly snaps out of the monitor and into sweeping IMAX-style aerial drone shots of the city. Later, the protagonist, who is physically tied to a chair, investigates the case by interacting with flawless 3D crime scene reconstructions that could not logically exist on a standard flat monitor. These visual injections directly violate Bekmambetov's own dogma of real-time, single-screen continuity. Shattering the Meta-Suture reminds the audience that a director is orchestrating the events. The film trades the claustrophobic realism of a desktop screen for conventional action pacing, alienating the viewer from the format's unique strength. To function as evidence within a story, digital footage requires specific textural imperfections. It needs to look somewhat raw. Film scholar Jamie Barron defines this mechanism as the archive effect, the psychological trigger that causes an audience to register media as genuine historical documentation. Viewers inherently trust glitches, low resolution, and heavy compression. These technical flaws signal that the recording was captured organically, free from studio tampering. Mercy centers its entire investigation around parsing through municipal cloud archives and network-connected Ring cameras to find the truth. But because the production possessed vast resources, the user interfaces feature immaculate 3D graphics, perfectly smooth window animations, and completely lossless video feeds. Erasing the compression and buffering errors removes the exact elements needed to trigger the archive effect. The footage ceases to look like a retrieved municipal record and registers simply as glossy visual effects. This aesthetic flaw exposes the corporate reality behind the camera. The film is distributed and produced by Amazon MGM Studios. Amazon happens to own the Ring surveillance brand, which is repeatedly positioned in the narrative as the flawless, reliable mechanism for discovering the truth. By failing to mimic actual archival imperfections, the pristine digital evidence abandons any critical stance on mass surveillance. It functions entirely as high-end product placement. Analyzing how audiences interact with cinema requires looking at the psychological baseline established in traditional theaters. Film theorist Christian Metz explored this dynamic through his formulation of apparatus theory. This diagram illustrates Metz's core observation. Standard cinema positions the viewer as a hidden voyeur in a dark room. You observe the characters, but they cannot observe you, creating a zone of total psychological safety. This updated diagram tracks the shift in Screenlife, replacing the one-way mirror with a reciprocal gaze. Because characters interact through webcams and video calls, their eye lines align perfectly with the camera lens. In Mercy, the AI judge known as Maddox appears as an enormous face dominating the desktop interface, interrogating the protagonist. Maintaining constant direct eye contact aggressively collapses the psychological distance between the theater seat and the fictional world. Because the AI is looking straight down the lens, the audience absorbs the interrogation. You are no longer watching an investigation. You are assuming the exact perspective of the surveilled target. The reciprocal gaze strips away the safety of passive observation. It traps the viewer inside the architecture of the digital courtroom alongside the protagonist. To understand the implications of this claustrophobic viewing experience, we have to look at the philosophy of Michel Foucault. In his analysis of power and discipline, Foucault examined a specific architectural concept known as the panopticon. This structural layout shows the panopticon in action, a circular prison with a central observation tower surrounded by backlit cells. The design guarantees that inmates can be monitored at any moment, but they can never tell exactly when they are being watched. This map projects that same logic onto Los Angeles, 2029. The AI judge sits in the central tower, observing the population through network-connected cameras. In the real world, tech conglomerates manage this exact infrastructure, providing both the surveillance equipment and the data storage. Mercy spends its entire runtime implying this system is oppressive, only to reveal a severe ideological contradiction at the narrative climax. The protagonist secures his freedom not by dismantling the panopticon or exposing its ethical failures. He wins by navigating the surveillance system better than the algorithm does. By utilizing the municipal cloud and camera network to secure his innocence, the film validates the system. It argues that total surveillance works perfectly, as long as the right person is managing the data. Despite adopting the aesthetic of dystopian science fiction, Mercy breaks its own visual rules to deliver a highly corporate message. Instead of resisting the panopticon, the film ends up endorsing the mechanics of surveillance capitalism.